I sat in the sunlit atrium of what used to be my home, the one I paid for with every careful dollar after my husband died. The marble table felt cold under my fingertips. Preston's attorney, a sharp-faced man in a navy suit that probably cost more than my monthly medication, slid the thick envelope across the surface without meeting my eyes. "Eviction notice, Mrs. Voss," he said, voice smooth as polished stone. "Effective in 30 days. I looked at the document. My name was there in bold black ink. Eleanor Voss. The property address, 1742 Ridgeview Drive, Aspen, Colorado. The house with the glass walls that caught the morning light exactly the way my late husband Richard had loved. The house I had bought outright with his life insurance payout 15 years ago because I wanted somewhere safe for my only son and his future family. Preston stood behind the attorney, arms crossed, wearing that same half-smile he used when he closed big deals. Vanessa lingered near the floor-to-ceiling window, scrolling on her phone, her platinum blonde hair catching the light like she was posing for an invisible camera. She didn't even glance up. 5 seconds, Mother, Preston said quietly. That's all it took for you to sign everything over. You remember that night, don't you? I did remember. 5 years earlier, almost to the day. They had thrown what they called a family unity dinner. The long dining table had been set with crystal and fresh orchids flown in from somewhere expensive. Preston raised a glass of Dom Perignon and toasted my generosity. Vanessa had leaned in, her perfume too sweet, and said, "Eleanor, you're the rock of this family. We just want to make sure everything is protected for the future." They placed the papers in front of me. "Irrevocable living trust," they explained. "Standard estate planning. Sign here, initial there. It would keep things simple if anything ever happened to me." I was 63 then, still sharp, still trusting. I picked up the pen. The champagne had made my head feel light. I signed. 5 seconds. Maybe less. Now the attorney cleared his throat. "The trust documents are clear. As successor trustee, Mr. Preston Voss has full authority to manage the assets, including this residence." I folded my hands in my lap. My knuckles were still smooth, but the veins showed more than they used to. "And where exactly am I supposed to go?" I asked. My voice stayed even. No tremor, no plea. Vanessa finally looked over, lips curving in that practiced influencer smile. "There are lovely assisted living communities in Denver. We've already toured a few. Very discreet. Very appropriate for your stage of life." Preston nodded once. "It's for your own good, Mom. You've been forgetting things. The doctor's notes are in the file." I hadn't forgotten anything, but I said nothing. The attorney stood, buttoning his jacket. "You have 30 days to vacate. Any personal items not removed will be considered abandoned." He paused, then dropped a second, thinner folder onto the table. "And this is the petition for appointment of guardian and conservator. Mental incompetence. We'll need your signature acknowledging service, or we can serve you formally in court. Either way, the hearing is set." He placed a pen beside the folder. I stared at it. The atrium felt suddenly smaller, the mountain view outside the glass walls too bright, too indifferent. Preston stepped closer. His cologne was the same one Richard used to wear, but on him it smelled wrong. "Just sign it, Mother. It makes everything cleaner. You won't have to worry about bills anymore. We'll handle it all." I didn't touch the pen. The attorney waited a beat, then shrugged. "We'll see you in court, then." He gathered his briefcase and headed for the front door. Preston followed, but not before leaning down near my ear. 5 seconds, he whispered again. "You gave it all away in 5 seconds." The door clicked shut behind them. I sat there for a long minute, the eviction notice still on the table. Outside, snow dusted the pines. Inside, the silence pressed against my ribs like a weight I had carried for years without noticing how heavy it had become. I reached for the second folder. My fingers were steady as I opened it. The petition listed reasons: memory lapses, inability to manage finances, confusion about recent transactions. Attached were affidavits from Preston and Vanessa. One doctor's note, a physician I had never met, suggesting early cognitive decline. I closed the folder. Then I stood up, walked to the kitchen, and poured myself a glass of water. No shaking hands, no tears, just the cool liquid sliding down my throat while my mind began to turn, slow and precise, like the gears of an old clock finally winding tight after years of being ignored. Because I remembered more than that dinner. I remembered the first small transfer 2 weeks after I signed. $34,000 moved to an account labeled Family Legacy Holdings. Preston had laughed when I asked. "It's your money, Mum. Relax. We're just organizing things." I remembered the allowance drop from $12,000 a month to $700. Budgeting exercise, Vanessa had called it with a bright laugh. Everyone needs to learn responsibility, even at your age. I remembered selling my grandmother's pearl necklace last year for cash because the grocery deliveries suddenly stopped appearing on the account they controlled. And I remembered the hidden camera I had installed in the guest wing months ago, the one that recorded every conversation when they thought I was asleep. I carried the glass back to the atrium and sat down again. The eviction notice lay there like a dare. 30 days. I had 30 days to do what I should have done 5 years ago. I picked up my phone, the one they didn't know I had added a second line to, and dialed a number I had saved under a false contact name. "Marcus Hale?" The voice answered on the second ring. Calm, professional. The elder financial abuse specialist I had found through a discreet referral 6 months earlier. "Marcus," I said quietly, "they just served me. Eviction and the incompetence petition. The hearing is in 30 days. A short pause, then. I'll need everything we've gathered so far. Scans, recordings, statements. Can you get them to me by tonight?" "I can." "Good. We start building the counter case immediately. They think they have 5 years of momentum. We're going to show them what 5 years of evidence looks like." I ended the call and looked out at the mountains again. The glass walls reflected my face back at me, composed, older, but not broken. 5 seconds of bad decisions. 5 years of regret. But the regret wasn't going to be mine. I stood, folded the eviction notice neatly, and tucked it into the folder with the petition. Then I walked to the guest wing, opened the small safe hidden behind the abstract painting, and pulled out the first thick binder of bank statements. Page after page of numbers. $340,000 wired to Vanessa's lifestyle brand account. $187,000 on a single Centurion card statement for brand development. $2.8 million yacht purchase listed under Family Investment LLC. Every line item was dated, every transaction traceable. I sat at the small desk and began sorting them into chronological order. My movements were deliberate. No rush, no panic, because in 30 days the courtroom would open, and when it did, I would not be the confused old woman they had painted. I would be the one holding the receipts. The sun moved across the atrium floor, shifting the shadows. I kept working, and for the first time in 5 years, the weight in my chest felt different. Not lighter yet, but aimed, like an arrow finally nocked and drawn back, waiting for the exact moment to fly. I closed the binder of bank statements and let my eyes drift to the mountains outside the glass walls. The light had shifted again, softer now, the way it did on that evening 5 years ago. I could still smell the orchids. It was a Tuesday in late April. Preston had called me that morning, voice bright with excitement. "Mom, we're doing a family unity dinner tonight, just the 3 of us. No outsiders. We want to show you how much we appreciate everything you've done." I had smiled into the phone, the way mothers do when their only child sounds happy. I wore the navy silk blouse Richard had bought me for our 30th anniversary. I even put on the pearl earrings he gave me the year before he passed. The table looked like something from a magazine. Vanessa had hired a private chef from Vale. 6 courses, Wagyu beef that melted on the tongue, a 2015 Bordeaux breathing in the crystal decanter. Preston poured my glass first, then raised his own. "To Eleanor Voss," he said, eyes warm, "the woman who made all of this possible. Your generosity built this family's future. We just want to protect it for you." Vanessa touched my arm, her manicured nails light on my sleeve. "You've carried so much, Eleanor. The house, the accounts, the investments. We're here now. Let us take the wheel a little. It's only fair." I felt useful, needed. I had spent 63 years being the quiet one who kept the books straight, who never asked for applause. Richard's insurance had left me comfortable, yes. More than comfortable. But Preston was my son, my only child. If he wanted to handle the paperwork so I could finally rest, why not? They slid the folder across the linen tablecloth. Thick cream paper. Gold-embossed header. Voss Family Revocable Living Trust. Preston flipped to the signature page with a practiced motion. "Just estate planning, Mum. Standard stuff. Keeps the IRS happy and everything in one place if, well, you know. We never want you to worry." Vanessa smiled that curated smile, the one she used for her lifestyle posts. "Sign here and here, initials on the tabs. 5 seconds and we're done." I picked up the pen. It was heavy, silver, the kind Preston liked. The champagne had softened the edges of the room. I signed, Eleanor M. Voss. Date, initials, 5 seconds, maybe 4. They both exhaled at the same time, a soft laugh following. Preston folded the papers neatly and slipped them into his leather portfolio. Perfect. Now we can all relax. We finished dessert, creme brulee with fresh vanilla bean. I went to bed that night feeling lighter than I had in years. My son had stepped up. My daughter-in-law respected me. The house was still mine, the accounts still mine, just organized, protected. The next morning I woke to birdsong and the smell of coffee. Preston had set the Keurig to my favourite dark roast. He kissed my cheek in the kitchen, something he hadn't done since college. "Morning, Mom. Sleep well?" I nodded, like a rock. Vanessa was already at the island, tapping on her phone. "We're transferring a few things into the trust today." "Nothing major, just to get the ball rolling." I poured my coffee. "How much?" Preston waved a hand. 42,000 to cover the new landscaping quote. You'll see it on the statement. All above board. I sipped. It tasted good. All right. That was the first one, $42,000. I noticed it 2 days later when I logged into the joint account I still had access to back then. A wire to Voss Family Legacy Holdings, LLC. I stared at the screen for a long minute. Then I closed the laptop. It was landscaping. Practical. My son was handling things. 3 weeks later, another transfer, $78,000. This one labelled Estate Planning Legal Fees. I called Preston. "Everything okay, Mum?" "Yes, just checking on the $78,000. He laughed softly. "Attorney fees, Mum. That trust document was more complex than we thought. You'll get the invoice copy next month. Don't worry about it." I didn't. The withdrawal stayed small for the first 6 months. $112,000 in May for property tax reserve. $94,000 in June for family health premiums. I kept the statements in a drawer in the guest wing. I told myself it was normal. Adult children managing their aging parents' affairs. I was lucky. Most mothers ended up in nursing homes with nothing. By the end of year 1, the monthly allowance they had promised me dropped. $12,000 became $700. Vanessa sat me down in the atrium one Sunday morning, sunlight pouring across the marble. We're teaching fiscal responsibility, Eleanor, even to ourselves. 700 is more than enough for personal expenses. The trust covers everything else now. I looked at the new statement she handed me. Groceries, utilities, my medication copays, all listed under trust disbursements. My name was nowhere on the checks anymore. I folded the paper. I see. Preston walked in then, carrying a fresh bottle of water for Vanessa. You're not upset, are you, Mom? This is how modern families do it. Trust and transparency. I smiled the small smile I had perfected over decades. Of course not. Inside, something shifted. Not anger yet, just the first quiet click of a lock turning. I started keeping my own copies. Every statement, every email. I bought a small notebook and wrote the dates in my careful bookkeeper hand. I didn't confront. I watched. The second year, the numbers grew bolder. 160,000 wired to an account I didn't recognize. I asked once over dinner. Preston cut his steak neatly. Investment opportunity, Mum. Short-term bridge loan. Returns in 90 days. You'll see the profit. I nodded. 90 days. 90 days came and went. No profit showed on my statements. The trust balance, the one they now controlled completely, had dropped another 420,000. I still said nothing. I was still the mother who believed. Until the morning the thick envelope arrived from the bank, not the trust's bank. My old personal account, the one I had kept open with a few $1,000s of my own PIN money. The statement showed a single incoming wire transfer, $340,000 from the trust, dated 3 days earlier. I opened the envelope at the kitchen island while the coffee brewed. The number sat there in black and white, bold as a headline. I called Preston. He answered on the second ring, voice cheerful. Hey, Mum. What's up? The bank statement came. $340,000 moved into my old account. A short pause. Then the laugh I had heard 1,000 times. Warm. Dismissive. It's your money, Mum. Relax. We just needed to park it there temporarily while we restructure some holdings. You'll see it all go back next week. I looked out the glass wall at the snow-dusted pines. My reflection stared back at me. Composed, 64 now, hair still neatly silver. Next week, I repeated. Absolutely, trust me. I ended the call. I didn't trust him anymore. But I still believed he might come back from whatever edge he was walking. I still believed my son was not the man who would empty the well his mother had spent a lifetime filling. I slipped the statement into the growing folder in the guest wing safe. Then I made another pot of coffee and sat down with my notebook. $340,000. One wire. One more line in my careful handwriting. The mountain light outside turned colder. I kept writing, because somewhere in the back of my mind, the quiet click I had felt earlier had become the slow, steady tick of a clock. Counting down. 2 years had passed since that dinner, and the house no longer felt like mine. I stood in the atrium one crisp October morning and watched Vanessa direct 2 movers as they carried out the last framed photograph of Richard. It was the one from our 20th anniversary, taken on the terrace with the Rockies behind us. His arm was around my waist. I was laughing. Now the movers wrapped it in brown paper and taped it shut like it was trash. These old pictures clutter the aesthetic, Vanessa said, not looking at me. She wore white linen, even though the mountain air was already sharp. We're curating a fresh family narrative. Clean lines. Modern legacy. I didn't answer. My hands stayed in the pockets of my cardigan. The wool was thinning at the elbows, but I still wore it because Richard had bought it for me the winter before he died. Preston walked in from the kitchen, coffee in hand. "Looks good, babe. The new gallery wall will pop on camera." He glanced at me. "You don't mind, Mom, right? We're just updating the vibe." I looked at the empty nail holes where my life used to hang. "The vibe," I repeated. Vanessa smiled that bright, practiced smile. "Exactly. Content is king these days." Our followers loved a story of the self-made couple honoring their roots without the outdated decor. The movers left. The atrium felt bigger, colder. Sunlight hit the bare walls and showed every speck of dust. Later that same week, Preston sat me down at the marble table again. The eviction notice from 5 years in the future had not yet arrived, but the first real cut was here. "We've reviewed the trust disbursements," he said, sliding a single sheet toward me. "To teach fiscal responsibility across the board, your personal allowance is now $700 a month. The trust covers all household expenses, groceries, utilities, your prescriptions. You won't even notice the difference." $700. I had been receiving $12,000. I stared at the number until it blurred slightly. Then I looked up. 700. Vanessa nodded from her seat beside him, legs crossed, phone already in her lap. "It's empowering, Eleanor. You'll learn to prioritize. Everyone should." I folded the paper once, then twice. My thumbnail pressed a sharp crease. "I see." Preston reached across and patted my hand. "It's for your own good. You've been too generous for too long. Time to tighten the ship." I didn't pull my hand away. I simply stood, walked to the guest wing, and closed the door behind me with a soft click. That night, I opened the small safe behind the abstract painting. Inside were the bank statements I had been collecting. I added the new allowance memo. Then I took out the velvet box that held my grandmother's sapphire earrings and the thin gold bracelet Richard gave me on our 10th anniversary. I laid them on the desk under the lamp. The next morning I drove the 30 miles down to Aspen proper in the old Volvo they still let me keep. The jeweler on Main Street was discreet. He weighed the pieces, checked the stones, and offered me $4,800 cash. I took it. At the grocery store, I bought only what $700 could stretch across 30 days. Rice, beans, canned vegetables, the cheapest cuts of chicken. I kept the receipt. I wrote the date on the back in my careful hand, October 17th. Total spent $214.37. Balance remaining $485.63. I cooked the chicken that evening in the guest wing kitchenette. The smell drifted down the hall. Vanessa appeared in the doorway, nose wrinkled. "We have a chef coming in 3 times a week now, Eleanor. No need to fill the house with cooking odours." I stirred the pot once. "I prefer my own meals." She shrugged and left. By December, the balance was gone. I sold the pearl necklace next, $8,000. Then the small diamond pendant, $3,200. Each time I drove down the mountain, each time I counted the bills twice in the car before heading to the store, I kept every receipt in the safe. The folder was growing thicker. I still spoke to them at dinner when required. Short, polite sentences. No arguments. No tears. I was the quiet mother who had always been there, now slowly disappearing from the family photos and the family budget. One afternoon in January, I sat in the guest wing with my notebook open. The numbers told their own story. Year 1 total transferred without my direct knowledge, $1,840,000. Year 2, another $2,310,000. Combined, over $4 million funneled into accounts labeled Family Legacy Holdings, Voss Capital Partners, and Vanessa's new lifestyle brand, LLC. I closed the notebook. Then I picked up the second phone I had bought with cash from the jewelry sales. No one knew about it. I dialed the number I had found after 3 weeks of careful late-night research on the library computer in town. "Marcus Hale, Elder Financial Protection Attorney," the voice answered. I kept my tone level. "Mr. Hale, my name is Eleanor Voss. I believe my son and daughter-in-law are draining my assets through a revocable trust I signed 2 years ago. I have statements, I have dates. I need to know if there is still a way to stop this before it becomes permanent." A short pause. Then, "Mrs. Voss, I'm going to need you to send me everything you have. Scans, not photos. Use the secure link I'm texting you now. And under no circumstances confront them. Stay quiet. Stay invisible. We gather ironclad evidence first." I sent the first batch that night from the library parking lot using the public Wi-Fi. 27 pages of statements. 3 audio recordings I had made on the hidden device in my cardigan pocket during dinners where Preston bragged about family investments. I drove back up the mountain in the dark. Snow had started falling again, soft and silent against the glass walls of the house that was no longer mine. 2 weeks later, I overheard the conversation that changed the temperature in my chest from cold to ice. I was in the pantry off the main kitchen, reaching for a can of soup, when Vanessa's voice drifted through the half-open door. She was on speakerphone with someone I didn't recognize. "Once the incompetence ruling goes through, we'll sell the Aspen house outright," she said, voice low and excited. "The market is perfect right now. 3.2 million, easy. Then we put her in that assisted living facility in Denver, the one with the memory care wing. She won't even know the difference. Preston's already got the doctor lined up for the evaluation." A man's voice on the other end laughed. "And the trust becomes fully irrevocable after the 5-year mark." "Exactly. 5 more months and it's locked. She signed it herself. 5 seconds, remember?" I stood perfectly still between the shelves of organic pasta and the cases of sparkling water they never let me drink. My hand stayed on the soup can. The metal was cool against my palm. Vanessa ended the call with a satisfied hum. I waited until her heels clicked away down the hall. Then I stepped out of the pantry, soup can still in my hand, and walked back to the guest wing without making a sound. I placed the can on the counter. I opened the safe. I added a new page to the notebook. Date: February 3rd. Overheard: Vanessa planning sale of house post incompetence ruling. Assisted living, 5 months until irrevocable. My handwriting did not waver. I closed the notebook and locked the safe. Outside the guest wing window, the snow kept falling, covering the pines in perfect white silence. I sat down at the small desk, folded my hands, and stared at the blank wall where my own reflection should have been. They thought I was disappearing. They had no idea I was only becoming invisible on purpose. Because in 3 more years, the courtroom would open its doors. And when it did, every receipt, every wire, every whispered plan would be waiting. I exhaled once, slow and steady. Then I picked up the second phone and sent Marcus Hale another secure file. The arrow was drawn back further now. Not yet released. But the string was humming. Year 3 arrived like the first hard frost on the glass walls. Sudden, silent, and impossible to ignore. I woke one morning in the guest wing with a headache that wouldn't leave. My blood pressure, when I checked it on the small monitor I had bought with the last of the jewelry money, read 178/112. I stared at the numbers until they stopped swimming. Then I drove myself down the mountain to the clinic in Aspen, the one that still accepted cash patients who didn't want their names on the family trust's insurance. The doctor, a quiet woman with steel-grey hair, listened to my heart, looked at the readings, and wrote the prescription without asking too many questions. "Stress-induced hypertension," she said. $4,800 a month for the full regimen. 2 pills morning, 1 at night, plus the monthly blood work. Can you manage that? I nodded once. I can. I paid cash from the shrinking roll in my wallet. $3,200 for the first month's supply. The rest of my personal account, the secret one they still didn't know about, now sat at $11,400. Enough for 2 more months if I ate rice and beans every day and skipped the heating in the guest wing when they turned it down at night. Back at the house, I hid the pill bottles behind the abstract painting next to the safe. I took the first dose with room temperature water. The bitterness stayed on my tongue for hours. That same week, Preston filed the first paperwork. I found out when a plain brown envelope appeared on the kitchen island with my name typed across the front. No return address. I opened it in the guest wing under the desk lamp. Petition for temporary guardianship and conservatorship. Filed in Pitkin County Court. Listed me as respondent. Listed Preston as petitioner. Attached was a 1-page physician's evaluation from a doctor I had never seen. Mild cognitive impairment. Recommend immediate protective placement. I read every line twice. My hands stayed perfectly still. I did not call Preston. I did not walk into the main house and demand an explanation. I simply picked up the second phone, the one with the prepaid line, and sent Marcus Hale the scans. His reply came in under 4 minutes. Received. This is the opening move. We file our appearance tomorrow. Stay quiet. I'm coming to you. Marcus arrived 2 days later in an unremarkable grey sedan. No briefcase that screamed lawyer, just a slim tablet and a calm voice that matched the one on the phone. We met in the guest wing at 10 p.m. after Preston and Vanessa had gone to bed in the master suite they had redecorated with my money. I laid out the binders on the small desk. Every statement, every receipt, every hidden recording time-stamped and labelled. Marcus flipped pages without speaking for 20 minutes. Then he looked up. Mrs. Voss, they have moved $1.2 million into Vanessa's lifestyle brand, LLC, in the last 14 months alone, branded as Family Investment Returns. The wire confirmations show the originating account is the trust you signed. We can trace every cent. I nodded. 1.2 million. He tapped the tablet. We'll subpoena the full bank records next week, quietly. They won't know we're coming until the court order lands. In the meantime, I need you to keep doing exactly what you're doing. Document, record, breathe. I exhaled once, slow. I'm breathing. He almost smiled. Good, because your blood pressure tells me the stress is real. But the evidence is real too. We're building a fortress. We worked until 1 a.m. Marcus left the same way he came. Headlights off until he cleared the gate. I took my nighttime pill, washed it down, and sat at the desk again. The numbers on the page glowed under the lamp. $1,200,000 funneled into Vanessa's brand. Instagram posts flashed through my mind. Her in designer activewear, caption, "Building legacy with love." The love had my account numbers on it. The next morning, Preston cornered me in the atrium while I was making tea. He wore his weekend cashmere, the colour of expensive cream. "Mom, I filed some paperwork yesterday, just a precaution. The doctor thinks it's time we step in a little more formally, for your protection." I stirred the tea. The spoon clinked once against the cup. I saw the petition. Vanessa appeared behind him, arms folded, smile tight. "It's not personal, Eleanor. It's practical. Once you're under conservatorship, the trust handles everything smoothly. No more stress for you." I took a sip. The tea was bitter. No more stress. Preston leaned on the marble table, voice soft like he was closing a deal. "Sign the voluntary consent form I left on the island. It makes the hearing unnecessary. We all win." I set the cup down. "I'll think about it." Vanessa's eyes narrowed a fraction. "Don't overthink, Eleanor. You've always been so careful. That's why we're here to help." I looked at her for 3 full seconds.
Then I turned and walked back to the guest wing without another word. Marcus called that afternoon on the second phone. "We have the first subpoena ready."
Bank statements for the last 36 months. They'll be served next week. In the meantime, I pulled the original trust document from the county records. There's something you need to see. He arrived again after dark. We sat at the desk. He opened the tablet to a scanned page of the trust I had signed 5 seconds at that dinner table. "Look at clause 14b, he said quietly, buried in the definitions section. The trust becomes irrevocable on the 5th anniversary of execution, unless revoked in writing by the settlor before that date. They never told you. They never gave you the chance to revoke." I stared at the small print. The words blurred for half a second, then sharpened. 5 years, I said. "Exactly 5 years from the signature date," Marcus confirmed. "Which is 4 months and 11 days from today. Once it flips irrevocable, undoing this becomes 10 times harder. But we're not waiting for that flip. We're going to expose the fraud before it locks." He closed the tablet. "They think they're 5 seconds ahead. We're about to show them we've been 5 years behind the scenes." I sat very still. The hypertension pill schedule ticked in my head like a second heartbeat. The safe behind the painting held 3 new binders now. The hidden recorder in my cardigan had captured Preston's precaution speech that morning.
Marcus stood. "Keep going, Mrs. Voss. The wall is almost built." He left. I stayed at the desk until the mountains outside turned black against the stars. My tea had gone cold hours ago.
I didn't move to warm it. Instead, I opened the notebook to a fresh page and wrote the date in my careful hand. Then I wrote the clause number, 14b, irrevocable after 5 years. I underlined it twice. The arrow in my chest was no longer just drawn back. The string was vibrating now, a low, steady note only I could hear. 4 months and 11 days. I closed the notebook, locked the safe, and turned off the lamp. The guest wing fell into darkness, but I didn't need light anymore. I knew every number by heart. I entered year 4 as a ghost in my own house. The guest wing had become my entire world. 1 bedroom, 1 small kitchenette, 1 bathroom with the window that faced the service road instead of the mountains. I kept the lights low after 8 p.m. so no one would notice I was still awake. The main house glowed every weekend now. String lights along the terrace, valet parking for 20 cars, laughter that carried through the glass walls like it belonged to someone else's family. I ate canned soup most nights. Progresso, the chicken noodle kind that cost 98 cents on sale. I heated it on the single burner and ate straight from the pot to save on dishes. The steam fogged my glasses. I didn't wipe it away right away. It blurred the world just enough to make the noise from the party feel farther away. They never invited me anymore, not even as decoration. Vanessa had explained it once in the hallway, voice sweet as artificial honey. "Your presence would confuse the narrative, Eleanor. Our audience loves the story of the young power couple building from nothing. An older mother in the background complicates the brand." I had nodded. "I understand." I didn't, but I recorded it anyway. The small device lived in the left pocket of my cardigan now. Black, the size of a lipstick tube, voice activated. I pressed record every time I heard heels on the marble or Preston's laugh coming down the hall. I labelled each file by date and time on the second phone before uploading to Marcus Hale's secure portal at midnight. One Thursday in March, the statements arrived again. Not the trust's glossy folder this time, a plain envelope from a bank I had never heard of. Cayman Islands. I opened it at the desk under the single lamp. The first page showed an offshore account in the name of Voss Capital Partners Limited. Balance, $2,340,000. Recent activity, a single withdrawal of $2,800,000 labelled Luxury asset purchase, yacht. I stared at the line until the numbers stopped moving. That evening they hosted another dinner. I was not invited, but the guest wing shared a ventilation duct with the main dining room. I sat on the floor, beside the vent, in my cardigan, recorder running, bowl of cold soup beside me. Preston's voice came through clear. To the new boat. 42 feet of pure freedom. Paid for with smart family planning. 2.8 million. Cash. The broker said it's the best deal he's seen in 5 years. Someone clapped. Vanessa laughed that bright, scripted laugh. And the best part? It's all under the trust umbrella. Tax advantages out the wazoo. Eleanor would be so proud if she understood. I listened to the clink of crystal, the scrape of silver on china. I took another spoonful of soup. It tasted like metal. Later, after the last car left and the house went quiet, I replayed the recording. Preston's words again. Paid for with smart family planning. 2.8 million. I wrote the exact figure in the notebook beside the Cayman statement. Then I opened the folder Marcus had sent me the week before. Forensic Accounting Summary. Every wire traced. Every offshore shell company mapped. Total siphoned since the signature, $4,720,000 and climbing. I closed the notebook. My blood pressure that morning had been 162/98. Still high, but the pills were doing their quiet work. I took the evening dose with the last of the room temperature water and sat back down. Marcus called at 11:47 p.m. on the second phone. His voice stayed low. The offshore records just came in. Your son opened the Cayman account 3 weeks after you signed. First deposit, $450,000. We have the SWIFT confirmations. The yacht purchase is documented as a personal asset bought with trust funds. Irrevocable date is now 61 days away. We're ready to file the full counterpetition the moment they serve the incompetence papers. I exhaled once. 61 days. Exactly. Stay the ghost. Let them celebrate. The louder they get, the better the recordings sound in court. I ended the call. The next morning, I was up at 6:30, same as always. I made tea. I sorted the newest receipts. I hid the Cayman statement in the safe behind the painting. The arrow in my chest no longer vibrated. It had settled into a single, cold point of aim. I lived like that for weeks. Invisible, calculating, recording every brag, every casual mention of Mum's money turned into our legacy. I sold the last thing I had of value, the vintage Rolex Richard gave me on our 25th anniversary. $38,000 cash at the discreet dealer in Denver. I wired $25,000 to Marcus's trust account that same afternoon. The rest bought 3 more months of pills and enough rice and beans to last until the hearing. Preston and Vanessa grew bolder. They spoke about the Aspen house sale openly now, as if I had already been erased. 3.9 million minimum, Preston said one night through the vent. After the incompetence ruling, we list it next spring. Memory care facility deposit is already paid. Private room. She'll be comfortable. Vanessa added, and the brand will explode once we rebrand the yacht content. From trust fund to trust fund. Viral gold. I sat on the floor and let the words sink in. No anger in my throat anymore. Just the steady click of numbers adding up in my head. 4,720,000. Yacht, house, brand, offshore. The morning of the 61st day, I was in the kitchenette at 6:50 a.m., measuring rice for the day. The doorbell at the main gate rang sharp and early. I heard footsteps, then the front door open. A man's voice, official, not familiar. Process server for Eleanor Voss. Formal service required. I set the rice down. I walked down the short hallway in my cardigan, recorder already on in the pocket. Preston met me at the door between the wings.
His hair was still wet from the shower. He looked annoyed. "Mom, it's just paperwork. Sign for it and go back to bed." The process server stood on the threshold holding a thick packet. He read the caption aloud in a flat voice. "Pitkin County District Court, in the matter of the guardianship and conservatorship of Eleanor M. Voss.
Petition for adjudication of mental incompetence and appointment of guardian. Hearing scheduled for May 12th, exactly 5 years from the execution date of the Voss Family Revocable Living Trust." He handed me the packet. I took it with both hands. The paper was heavy. Official seal raised under my thumb. Preston smiled the same half-smile from the atrium 5 years earlier. "See? Right on schedule. Sign the acknowledgement at the bottom. It's easier this way." I looked at the date on the first page. May 12th. 5 years to the day. I did not sign. I simply closed the door. The process server left. Preston stood there a moment longer, then shrugged and walked back toward the main house. "Whatever. Court will handle it." I carried the packet to the desk in the guest wing. I opened it under the lamp, even though the sun was already up. Page after page of their narrative. Confusion, memory loss, inability to manage affairs, affidavits, the same doctor's note from year 3, updated. I laid the papers out flat. Then I picked up the second phone and sent Marcus Hale 3 words. They just served me. His reply came in 20 seconds. "Hearing in 30 days. We are ready. The arrow is yours." I set the phone down. Outside the glass wall, the mountains stood sharp and indifferent in the morning light. Inside, the packet of lies sat on my desk like an invitation. I opened the safe one last time and added the newest pages to the thickest binder yet. Every receipt, every recording, every offshore wire, every brag about the $2.8 million yacht. I closed the safe. I sat down. And for the first time in 4 years, I allowed myself one small, cold smile that no one else could see. The court date was set, exactly 5 years after that dinner, exactly 5 years after 5 seconds of my signature. The regret was no longer mine to carry. It had found its proper home. The final month before the hearing stretched like a wire pulled tight across the guest wing. I woke each morning at 5:47 a.m. exactly. No alarm. The body keeps its own count after 4 years of this. I took the hypertension pills with the same glass of room temperature water, then sat at the desk and reviewed the binders one more time. Marcus Hale had turned the evidence into a fortress. Forged signatures on 3 internal trust amendments, small, clever forgeries that added Vanessa as co-trustee without my knowledge. Unauthorized wires totaling $4,720,000. A clear pattern of financial exploitation documented in 47 separate transactions, each one time-stamped and cross-referenced with the hidden recordings. He had called the night after the process server left. "We have them, Mrs. Voss. The Cayman Bank just complied with a subpoena. Every offshore transfer is now Exhibit A through Z. The yacht purchase alone is enough to trigger criminal referral if we want it. But we're keeping it civil, clean, devastating." I had answered with one word. Good. No celebration, no sigh of relief. Just the quiet click of another page turned in the notebook. I sold the Rolex the week after the papers were served. Not out of desperation this time, out of precision. The dealer in Denver paid $38,000 cash, same as before. I wired $29,000 straight to Marcus's client trust account that afternoon. The remaining $9,000 went into a plain envelope in the safe. Emergency cash for the war chest if anything went sideways. I kept the receipt, dated it, filed it behind the forged signature exhibit. Preston and Vanessa grew bolder every day, as if the hearing were already won. They stopped pretending I existed in the main house. I heard their voices through the vent while I ate my rice and beans. One evening in early May, they stood in the atrium with 2 realtors, laughing over champagne. $3.9 million minimum, Preston said. The market is hot. We list it the day after the ruling. Cash buyer lined up from Vale. Vanessa's heels clicked on the marble. And the assisted living deposit is locked. Private suite, memory care wing. She'll have round-the-clock supervision. Perfect for her. Stage. The realtor chuckled. Smart move. These older properties with family complications sell faster once the title is cleaned up. I sat on the floor beside the vent, recorder running in my cardigan pocket. I took another spoonful of beans. They tasted like nothing. I wrote the exact quote in the notebook later. Title is cleaned up. Then I closed it and locked the safe. Marcus visited twice more, always after dark, always in the unremarkable grey sedan. We reviewed the final affidavits at the small desk. He showed me the motion to dismiss their petition and the cross-complaint for breach of fiduciary duty, elder financial abuse, and constructive fraud. Numbers in bold. $4,720,000 in restitution sought. Full revocation of the trust. Return of the Aspen property deed. Freeze on every Voss Capital account. "You've been stoic for 4 years," he said quietly on the last visit. "Tomorrow the courtroom gets to see why." I looked at him. "I know the numbers." He nodded once and left. The night before the hearing I could not sleep, not from fear, from readiness. I sat in the dark guest wing until 11:15 p.m., the packet of court papers open on the desk under the single lamp. Every exhibit labelled, every recording transcribed. The arrow in my chest had stopped vibrating days ago. It was simply there, pointed, waiting. At 11:37 p.m., I heard the soft click of the connecting door between the wings. Footsteps. Preston's. He didn't knock. He walked straight into the kitchenette where I kept the single burner and the rice. I stood by the sink in my cardigan, hands loose at my sides. The recorder was already on. He stopped 3 feet away, hair still perfect, cashmere sweater, the same half-smile he had worn when he slid the trust papers across the dinner table 5 years earlier. "Ma'am," he said, voice low and reasonable, the way he spoke to difficult clients. "The hearing is tomorrow at 9. But it doesn't have to go that far. Sign the voluntary conservatorship form tonight. It'll be easier for everyone. The judge will see you're cooperating. No public mess, no embarrassment." He placed a single sheet on the counter between us. The form. His attorney had already filled in my name. All I had to do was sign. I looked at the paper, then I looked at him. 5 years of rice and beans. 5 years of $700 a month. 5 years of watching them sell my life piece by piece while they toasted to family planning and bought a $2.8 million yacht with my signature. I did not speak. I simply met his eyes and held them. The half-smile faltered for half a second. "Come on, Mum. You've always been the reasonable one. Sign it. We'll take care of everything. The house, the accounts, your care. It's the right thing." Still nothing from me. He shifted his weight. The kitchenette light caught the platinum watch on his wrist. New, expensive, paid for by the same trust. 5 seconds, he said, softer now. "That's all it took last time. 5 seconds and you trusted us. Do it again, for the family." I kept my eyes on his. No anger in my face. No tremor in my hands. Just the steady, cold calm of 4 years of receipts and recordings and blood pressure pills taken in silence. He waited another beat. Then he exhaled through his nose, picked up the unsigned form and folded it once. "Fine," he said. "Have it your way. The judge will see exactly what we've been dealing with." He turned and walked out. The connecting door clicked shut behind him. I stayed exactly where I was for a full minute. Then I reached into my cardigan pocket, stopped the recorder, and labelled the file on the second phone. May 11th, 11:42 p.m. Final offer. I sent it to Marcus. Then I turned off the lamp and stood in the dark. Tomorrow the courtroom would open at 9 sharp. Preston and Vanessa would arrive in the black Range Rover, confident, prepared, certain that 5 seconds from 5 years ago had locked everything in place. They had no idea the binders in my safe now held enough paper to bury them. They had no idea the woman they had erased from every photo and every account was about to walk into that courtroom carrying 5 years of cold, meticulous proof. I exhaled once, slow and steady. The guest wing was silent. The mountains outside the small window were black against the stars. And for the first time in 5 years, I felt something close to peace. Not victory yet, but the string was released. The arrow was already in flight. The courtroom smelled of polished wood and stale coffee. Pitkin County District Court, May 12th, 9 o'clock sharp. I walked in alone, no cane, no tremor. The navy silk blouse I had saved for this day felt cool against my skin. Marcus Hale waited at the defense table, files stacked like bricks. He gave me one small nod. I sat. Preston and Vanessa arrived 2 minutes later. Black Range Rover outside. I had watched it pull up from the hallway window. Preston wore the navy suit he saved for closings. Vanessa had chosen cream silk, the kind that photographed well under fluorescent lights. They took their seats at the petitioner's table, attorneys flanking them like guards. Preston glanced at me once. The half-smile was gone, just a flat stare. The judge entered, Honourable Lydia Grant. 60-something, silver hair pulled tight, eyes that had seen every family lie imaginable. She opened the file without ceremony. Petition for adjudication of mental incompetence and appointment of guardian and conservator. Eleanor M. Voss, respondent. Preston Voss, petitioner. Let's begin. Their attorney stood first. Smooth voice, rehearsed. Your Honour, the evidence is clear. Mrs. Voss signed a revocable living trust 5 years ago. Since then, she has shown confusion over basic finances, memory lapses, and an inability to manage daily affairs. We have medical affidavits. Bank records show she no longer tracks her own accounts. The trust is functioning exactly as intended, protecting her from herself.
He sat. Vanessa touched Preston's sleeve, a small proprietary gesture. I watched the clock on the wall, second hand moving steady. Marcus stood. Your Honour, we stipulate that Mrs. Voss signed the trust.
5 seconds, to be precise. What we will prove today is that the petitioners exploited that signature for personal gain. Elder financial abuse in excess of $4.7 million. Fraudulent concealment of an irrevocable clause. And a pattern of isolation and gaslighting designed to manufacture the very incompetence they now claim. He opened the first binder. Exhibit 1. Bank statements from the Voss family trust account. Over 36 months, 112 unauthorized wires totaling $4,720,000. The clerk passed copies to the bench. The judge flipped pages. Her eyebrows rose a fraction. Marcus continued. Exhibit 2. Cayman Islands account records subpoenaed last month. Voss Capital Partners Limited. First deposit 3 weeks after the trust signing. $450,000. Recent withdrawal. $2.8 million for a luxury yacht titled in Preston Voss's name. Preston's attorney jumped up. Objection. Relevance. Overruled, the judge said. Continue, Mr. Hale. Marcus didn't pause. Exhibit 3. Centurion card statements issued under the trust. $187,000 in a single year charged to Vanessa Voss's lifestyle brand, LLC. Purchases. Designer wardrobes, private jets, content creation equipment. All labeled brand development. Vanessa's face went the color of old paper.
Her manicured hand tightened on the table edge until the knuckles showed white. Marcus placed the next binder down with a soft thud. Exhibit 4. Audio recordings. 43 separate files, time-stamped, voice authenticated. In the petitioner's own words. He pressed play on the small speaker.
Preston's voice filled the courtroom, clear as the night he had cornered me in the kitchenette. "Sign the voluntary conservatorship, Mum. It'll be easier for everyone." Then Vanessa, through the vent 2 weeks earlier. "Once the incompetence ruling goes through, we'll sell the Aspen house. 3.9 million. Put her in assisted living. She won't even know." The judge's eyes narrowed. She looked at Preston, then at me. Marcus kept going. Exhibit 5, the original trust document, Clause 14b buried in the definitions section. The trust becomes irrevocable on the 5th anniversary unless revoked in writing by the settlor. Petitioners never disclosed this clause. They never gave Mrs. Voss the opportunity to revoke. They allowed the clock to run while they drained the accounts. The judge leaned forward. She read the clause herself. The courtroom was so quiet I could hear the air conditioning hum. Preston's attorney stood again, voice less smooth now. "Your Honor, these recordings were made without consent. They're inadmissible." Marcus answered before the judge could speak. "Colorado is a one-party consent state, Counselor. Mrs. Voss was present for every conversation. She consented." The judge looked at me directly for the first time. "Mrs. Voss, do you confirm these recordings were made by you?" I stood. My voice was quiet, steady, the same tone I had used for 4 years of rice and beans. "Yes, Your Honor. Every one." I sat back down. No flourish, no tears. Marcus closed the last binder. "Your Honor, we also move for immediate return of the Aspen property deed, full restitution of $4.7 million, removal of Preston Voss as trustee, and denial of the guardianship petition in its entirety." The only incompetence here was the petitioner's belief that they could erase 50 years of my client's life in 5 seconds. He sat. The judge looked at Preston's table. "Response?" Their attorney opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. "Your Honor, we would like to request a short recess to review the exhibits." "Denied," the judge said. "We've seen enough for one morning. Mrs. Voss, do you wish to address the court?" I stood once more. The courtroom waited. Preston stared at the table. Vanessa's eyes were fixed on the wall behind me, as if the mountains outside could save her. I looked at the judge. My hands stayed at my sides. No notes. I had memorized every number years ago. I stood. The courtroom was so quiet I could hear the faint scratch of the court reporter's pen. I did not look at Preston. I did not look at Vanessa. I looked only at the judge. "Your Honor," I said, voice low and even, the same tone I had used for 4 years of rice and beans. "I am 73 years old. I signed those trust papers 5 years ago in 5 seconds because my son told me it was for the family. I believed him. I have the bank statements that prove what happened next." I paused 1 beat. No drama, just facts. $4,720,000. That is the exact amount withdrawn from the trust I created. 112 separate wires. I have the dates, I have the account numbers. 2.8 million of it bought a yacht titled in my son's name. 187,000 went to my daughter-in-law's lifestyle brand on a single Centurion card in 1 year. Designer clothes, private flights, content for her followers, all labelled family investment. I let the numbers sit in the air. Exhibit 14b in Mr. Hale's binder shows the trust was never properly executed. The notary who witnessed my signature was not licensed in Colorado on the date of the dinner. A fatal technical error. The document they rushed me to sign in 5 seconds was defective from the first stroke of the pen. It never became irrevocable. They knew it. They let the clock run anyway while they drained every account I had built with my husband's insurance money. Vanessa's mouth opened, then closed. No sound came out. I kept my hands at my sides. I did not forget things. I did not lose track of my finances. I documented every transfer. I recorded every conversation because I knew the day would come when they would call me incompetent for noticing what they were doing. I am not confused, Your Honor. I am finished being erased. I sat down. The judge looked at Preston's table for a long moment. Her face did not change. She turned a page in the file. "Mr. Voss," she said, "do you have anything to add before I rule?" Preston's attorney stood, tie suddenly too tight. "Your Honor, we request time to—" "Denied." The judge's voice cut like a blade. "This court finds the petition for guardianship and conservatorship without merit. The evidence of financial exploitation is overwhelming and intentional. The trust is hereby revoked in full. The Aspen property at 1742 Ridgeview Drive is ordered returned to Eleanor Voss immediately, title unencumbered. Full restitution of $4,720,000 is due within 30 days. All accounts held by Preston Voss and Vanessa Voss under any Voss Capital entity are frozen pending payment. Ms. Voss's influencer accounts and associated LLCs are subject to immediate subpoena for forensic audit." She closed the file with a soft snap. "Mr. Voss, Mrs. Voss, you are excused. Court is adjourned." The gavel came down once. I stood again, slower this time. Marcus touched my elbow lightly. We walked out together. The hallway outside the courtroom smelled of floor wax and nerves. Preston and Vanessa were already there, waiting by the elevators. Their attorney was on his phone, voice low and urgent. Preston stepped forward. His face was pale under the fluorescent lights. "This isn't over, Mother." I stopped 3 feet away. My voice stayed soft, almost conversational, the way one speaks when the fight is already won. "It was over the moment you thought 5 seconds could erase 50 years of my life." Vanessa stared at the floor. Her cream silk blouse suddenly looked cheap. I turned and walked toward the exit doors. Marcus stayed at my side. Outside, the Colorado sun was bright on the courthouse steps. Snow still clung to the mountains in the distance. I reached into the inner pocket of my navy blouse and pulled out a plain white envelope. I handed it to Marcus. He opened it without asking. Inside were 2 things. The deed to a smaller cliffside cottage I had quietly purchased 6 months earlier with the last of the jewelry money and the $9,000 from the Rolex sale, and a one-way, first-class ticket to a destination I had chosen for myself alone. Marcus looked at the ticket, then at me. A small professional smile touched his mouth. "New beginning," he said. I nodded once. New beginning. Behind us, the heavy courthouse doors opened again. Preston's voice carried on the cold air, but I did not turn around. I walked down the steps toward the waiting car Marcus had arranged. The driver held the door. I slid into the back seat. The leather was warm from the sun. As the car pulled away, I looked out the window at the mountains I had stared at for 5 years through glass walls that were never mine. They looked different now, smaller, manageable. The regret I had carried since that dinner table was finally in the right hands. Mine were empty, and for the first time in half a decade, they felt perfectly steady. 6 months had passed since the gavel came down in that Pitkin County courtroom. The Aspen estate at 1742 Ridgeview Drive went to auction exactly 31 days after the ruling. I did not attend the sale. Marcus Hale handled every detail. The final hammer fell at $3.9 million. Cash buyer from Vail, no contingencies. The trust account I now controlled received the wire the following Monday. $3.9 million added to the $4.72 million already frozen and returned. $8.6 million total, sitting clean and untouched in a new private bank in Denver. I left it there. I did not touch a cent. Preston and Vanessa sold the black Range Rover 2 weeks later. I saw the listing on a local real estate app Marcus forwarded to me. Price reduced 3 times before it moved. They moved into a 2-bedroom rental in a quiet complex on the outskirts of Denver. No mountain views, no glass walls, just beige siding and a small concrete patio. Vanessa's influencer accounts went dark the same month. The last post was a blurry story slide that read, "Rebranding in progress." Then nothing. Creditors filed liens the following week. The yacht was repossessed in Miami. The Centurion card was cancelled mid-transaction at a boutique in Cherry Creek. I knew the numbers because Marcus sent the public filings every Friday like clockwork. I read them at the small kitchen table of my new home and felt nothing but the steady click of accounts balancing. I live now in a modest cliffside cottage 30 miles west of Aspen, perched on a private road that ends at my gate. 2 bedrooms, 1 wide terrace overlooking the Rockies. No marble, no atrium, just cedar beams, stone floors, and windows that open to real air instead of filtered perfection. I bought it with cash from the Rolex and the last pieces of jewelry 6 months before the hearing. No one knew. Not even Marcus, until the title cleared. The monthly expenses run $840. I pay them from a separate account that receives $9,000 in interest each month from the new portfolio I built myself. No trust, no successor trustee, just my name on every document. This morning I sit on the terrace with a cup of dark roast coffee I brewed myself. The steam rises slow in the cool September air. Below me, the valley stretches out, pines sharp against the granite. No string lights, no valet parking, no voices discussing how best to erase me from the family narrative. I take a sip. The coffee is strong and bitter, exactly the way I like it now. A letter arrived yesterday from Preston. Plain white envelope, no return address, postmarked from Denver. I opened it on this same terrace. Inside was a single sheet. His handwriting, the same neat script he used on the trust papers 5 years ago.
Mum, we are in a difficult position. The judgment has left us with nothing. Vanessa's brand is gone. Our savings are frozen.
If you could find it in your heart to release even a small portion of the restitution, we could start over. We are family, after all. I read it twice. Then I folded the paper once, carried it inside, and placed it in the bottom drawer of the desk, beside the old notebook filled with every receipt, every wire, every recorded minute of their voices. I did not answer. I will not answer. The money never bought them character. It only revealed what was already there. I walk back inside, close the sliding glass door against the breeze, and sit at the simple oak desk by the window. My laptop is open. The screen is blank except for the date in the top corner. September 14th, 2026. I place my fingers on the keys and begin to type the first line of the story you are hearing right now. I sat in the sunlit atrium of what used to be my home. The words come steady, one after another, exactly as I lived them. No embellishment, no tears, just the numbers, the dates, the cold precision of 5 years that taught me the only power that matters is the power you keep when no one is watching. I type for 40 minutes without stopping. When I reached a part where the process server handed me the packet at 6:50 a.m., I pause, take another sip of coffee, and continue. The sun has moved across the terrace outside. The shadows on the cedar floor are longer now. I do not rush. There is no one waiting for me to finish, no dinner to attend, no allowance to stretch across 30 days of rice and beans. This is the freedom I bought with silence and preparation. Not the 8.6 million in the bank, not the cottage or the view. The freedom to sit here alone and tell the story exactly as it happened without asking permission from anyone. I finish the final paragraph and save the file. Then I close the laptop and stand. Outside, the Rockies have turned gold in the late light. I step onto the terrace again, cup in hand, and look down the valley toward the city, where Preston and Vanessa now live in their beige rental. I wonder, for one brief second, if they ever think about the 5 seconds at that dinner table. I wonder if they understand yet that the regret they created has followed them home, and will stay there long after the last creditor has moved on. I do not wonder for long. I finish the coffee, rinse the cup in the sink, and place it on the drying rack. The house is quiet except for the soft hum of the refrigerator and the distant call of a hawk circling above the ridge. Tomorrow I will type a little more. The day after that, a little more. When the story is complete, I will send it to Marcus to review, then release it into the world the way I released the past 6 months ago. Without looking back. Because the money never bought them character. My silence and my independence bought me everything that matters. And that is the only ending worth keeping. If you have ever sat across a marble table and watched someone you trusted rewrite your life in 5 seconds, if you have ever counted pennies while they counted yachts, tell me in the comments below what quiet plan you would set in motion. What single number you would track until it became your freedom. Your story may be different from mine, but the lesson is always the same. Prepare in silence, strike with receipts, and walk away lighter than you arrived. I will read every one. Until then, this is Eleanor Voss, signing off from a terrace that is finally completely mine.